finally starting to swap APN exhaust manifold, the aftermarket one, and I'm also getting rid of this junk intake and putting in the newer style one, which is from any 4-liter, years 1999 plus. Here's the tools you're going to need. In fact, this is way too much. You don't need all those ratchets, and you probably don't need screwdrivers or any amount of these wrenches. Basically what you need is a socket set, a few extensions, and wrenches, but not that many. I also got plastic bags and markers to mark my different bolts and stuff. Some are different length, different style. That's from the other intake. Just kind of threw them in there, don't care about those. It's easy, because, well, for me, this isn't attached, so I just, pull it right out. First step you want to do is remove your intake and your dirty filter by unclipping everything. And then there's 3 bolts. There's one here, one over here which is missing, and one over here. They're easy to find. You just go under the fender, and you can see them there. There's 2 of them. And the other one is up there. And also, oh, dragonfly, look at that. Oh well. If you get a snorkel with the inline filter, you take the box out and you have a nice good double battery spot right there. Another good idea would be to get some penetrating oil. I got PB Blast because it's cheap. And I also got one of these red things from another can. It doesn't come with this can. You stick it on there and you spray it on all the bolts. It'll help with taking them off, especially the exhaust ones. And so up next, what you want to do is take off your power steering pump. And by doing that, there is a bolt back in here. Loosen that off. It's a really long bolt. You just have to loosen it a little bit. Then there's these 3 bolts up here. 1, 2, and then one on the bottom. And in order to loosen that is so you can take off the belt to turn this pulley to stick your finger through the holes to get the bolt. Once you take it off, just swing it out of the way. Also, another tip, if you have a lifted vehicle, especially a Grand Cherokee, you might want a stool. Oops, crushed that dragonfly. Next step for you, if you're just changing the exhaust manifold, what you would normally do is disconnect everything. All the injectors, all this. This is the throttle, this is my hand throttle, but for you would be your cruise control. And this would be your transmission thing if you have an automatic. I swapped it, mine is standard. I have videos on that if you like to watch that. If you don't follow me on YouTube, everything else you disconnect, these vacuum lines, all these connections here. But for me, I'm swapping the intake, but I'm reusing my old harness and injectors. So for me, I'm just going to undo these few 10mm bolts along the fuel rail. Take off this plastic thing up here, which just slides right off. Undo a few connections down there by that sensor, and take it all off as one wiring harness unit. Alright, so all the bolts are off now. Obviously all the top ones. You want to do the bottom ones first, in case this is not suctioned to the vehicle from being on there for, 25,000 years. So you do the bottom ones first, and then you do the top ones. Because here's the problem. If you do the top ones, then the bottom ones, once you're done taking the last bottom one out, this whole thing could fall and you could hurt your hand or something. Even though it's not that heavy, it's just a pain in the ass to have it fall when your hand's under there. So do the bottom ones first, then the top. Then, with a bit of luck, it should come right off. This thing is on dowel pins. Oh, there you go. Dirty. Now all you have to do is take off the few bolts that hold on the exhaust manifold, which are easy to get at. And don't forget the 2 down there at the collector. There's that notorious crack we always get on these manifolds for the Jeep. A friend tried to weld it down here as best as he could. This crack goes all the way around. There we go. All the way around. Up into there. And then back right there where he caught a bit of weld on it. Absolute garbage. Now what you have left to do is peel off this gasket, which should come off in one piece. So maybe do that with 2 hands. And then get some brake cleaner and fine sandpaper and clean off that mating surface for the new gasket and new exhaust and everything. Well, I don't have the help of the sunlight today, that's for sure. Bastard. But anyway, yeah, it's all clean now, clean as I can get it. Cleaned out all the ports, intake, and exhaust. It's nice in there, a lot nicer. Clean these fuel injectors too. Might as well get them ready. So down here you can see the difference between the two. The bottom one is the new one I'm putting in, and the top one is the one I just took out. You can see the difference. There's the throttle body. Now you have to replace the gasket, and this gasket came with the A-pin header, which is the opposite of that garbage, which is over there in that box. And basically, I looked on a forum, and they said you can never tell which way the gasket goes because it's exactly the same both ways. But if you look on the old one, on the left side there's this little notch right here, which has nothing to do with anything. No bolt goes through there or nothing, at least that I can tell. But on the new one, there's no notch anywhere. On the old one, it said manifold side. Over here, it says nothing. So obviously, this side would be the manifold. But on this one, no matter which way you were to flip it, it would be exactly the same. So I'm just going to stick it onto the dowel pins and see which way fits better. Normally I wouldn't trust a gasket that comes with the product. I'd go out and buy a Velcro or something. But in this case I didn't buy a gasket, and I read that you can use it. So I'm going to. So stick it on that dowel pin there. And this dowel pin. The exhaust port seems to be way big, but the intake, they all line up. Line up good. Stick your finger in there, just check if there's any lips. No, it's all good. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to stick on the exhaust now. So there's the new and there's the old. You can quite see the pathetic difference there. Stick it on that last bolt there, since it never came out properly. Stick your washer on, and then your nut. Alright, and that goes there like that. Remember, it's this bolt. It's basically a stud with fine threads and then coarse threads. The coarse thread part goes into the engine block, and the washer, the crown, faces towards the outside of the vehicle. Just thread that in slightly. When it's all tight, there's going to be about 3/8 inch clearance between the motor mount and the exhaust. Before you put the new intake on, you want to take a look at this bracket. Now the old one, the bracket's kind of flipped because the gas line comes underneath about here. So what you need to do is take this bracket and basically flip it. And you're wondering, well, how do I do that? And I've seen that there's this second hole here, and if you unscrew this and just basically flip it around like that and put the bolt back in, then now the gas line comes where it's usually supposed to be, and it'll just clip into these two clips. And you'll also find that these clips are bent kind of like this towards the inside. You just have to pop off the little ear crap thing that's through that hole with a punch or something, and a vise, and then you just can straighten them. When the gas line pops right in, you can zip tie it if you're worried about it falling out. Another thing before you put the intake back on is these bolts on the exhaust, that one, and the one over there, there's 3. They do not have to be tight. They should not be tight. If they're tight, you're screwed, because look at this. it's not completely tight. I went ahead and torqued all these bolts, and this gasket isn't tight at the very top. Now if everything's torqued, this manifold is sort of cockeyed, like this. You put the intake on, it's not going to straighten out just as nice. So you have to loosen all the bolts off just a little bit so it's loose. And then when you put the intake on, tighten everything at once. In a sequence. Sorry I didn't film that. It took like half an hour to get the couple bolts in the back there. Especially underneath. You have to use a wrench. I'm the athletic type and my knees are shot right now from kneeling on the... I can't even talk. Anyway, next step is to hook up the fuel rail and all the harness and wiring. And don't forget about the collector down there. You gotta bolt that on too. Took me 7 hours-ish. Actually about 6.5. Went for lunch. But it's all in now. The newer style. I think everything's up. I just gotta get some duct tape because I broke that a while ago. Gotta tape that back on. And then had to sorry about that. Had to lengthen the wire for the I think the O2 sensor. Some sort of sensor there. That gray one. Had to lengthen the wire quite a bit, about a foot. And there she is running. A lot quieter. All this junk. Let me turn that off.